someone wants to talk us into having a program one evening and showing that DVD, I think that can be accomplished. It was so good. Our next Sharing Our Past series will feature Sue Berry and Rebecca Shelton, and it will be on widowhood in Victorian America, mourning customs of the 19th century. Actually, I mean, it is laughable. There was a new Victorian Homes magazine that just came out, and it showed told about the customs and showed these outfits that the women had to wear for a year or two or three. So it's interesting how you would have customs like that. We still have our photo exhibit of the Wrights family upstairs in the sitting sewing room. So if you are a member of the Wrights home, you know you can come in for free and go and take a look at it. If you are not a member, we have envelopes and you can become a member. One interesting thing is that the governor of Indiana, Governor Daniels, has asked for the portrait of John Augustus Wright. We have one that's about that big. And we are sending it up to the State House, and it will be on the wall of the governor's office for about 3 months. And I talked to Judge Shepard about it the other day, and he said, "Think I better tell him who he was, what he did." It is certainly my pleasure this evening to have Chris Nix here to do his presentation. Chris and his wife Dorothy are honorary members of the Wrights Home Preservation Society, and they have contributed so much with their time and talent and treasure over these past 19 or so more years. Chris is serving his 3rd year on the board, his 3rd 6-year term, and no one ever does that, but it is. And certainly my life improved at the Wrights home when Chris Nix came, because when I came, I would pull a door open and the knob would be in my hand. And then I would go to a closet and some hinge would fall off. And I mean, there were all sorts of things happening. And my husband is a very handy handyman. And I would have him come over and he'd say, "Well, you asked me to come over to fix this, but I'm still here and it's 3 hours later." So Chris has been in charge of all of our renovations and restorations, any little thing that needs to be done, he physically does himself. He was here for the renovation, I should say, of this carriage house. And you can tell from what we have done in here and the other rooms and upstairs how wonderful it was to have him. Right now, we had the new roof put on, but we're waiting for the metal people to come and put the Frederick Nix. But when you're in the construction business, I guess Chris Nix sounds better. He was born November 28th, 1925, in Britt, Iowa. He has worked very hard all his life in his work business, but also here as a volunteer and in the community, which I'll tell you more about. He helped construct LST landing ships and aircraft carriers during the early years of World War II. Can someone get some more chairs from the back, please? Okay, why don't you all take a seat before I continue? Sorry. A paratrooper assigned to the 11th Airborne Division in the Philippines. There he was selected to be one of General MacArthur's honor guards for the initial occupation of Japan and was on hand at the signing of the peace treaty. Now, I know he's going to tell you all this. He graduated from Evansville Mechanic Arts School after World War II and worked for an Evansville construction company. He started his own construction company in 1956, constructing many of the hallmark structures in the Evansville area. And a treat for me was sitting in the car and going around with Chris, and he says, we did that building, we did that building, we did that building, and it goes on and on and on. He was president of the Evansville Contractors Association in 1970, and then after retiring in 1989, he continued to volunteer as a consultant and manager for many nonprofit construction projects, like the University of Southern Indiana Salabron Retirement Community, the American Red Cross, the historic Rapp McClure Museum Home, the David Dale Owen Laboratory, and the historic Granary Building of New Harmony. He has been a director with the American Red Cross and Jacobs Village. He is a life member of the Veterans of Foreign War, Post 6576. He is also a charter member and benefactor of the National D-Day Museum in New Orleans, Louisiana. And then he also received the Evansville Leadership Award in 2001. In 2008, he received the Historic Preservation Award and Medal from the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution for outstanding achievement for his many years of preservation work on the many historic buildings which I just told you about in the area. In 2009, he was one of the World War II veterans honored by Tom Brokaw and Tom Hanks at the dedication service of the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. 65 years ago today, Japan signed the treaty ending World War II. Tonight, Chris will tell his story of his years in the military and the events that led up to this historic event. Would you give Chris Nix a warm welcome?
Well.
They won't hear you. They won't hear you. I'll put this over.
Well, I can hold this on.
Oh, yeah. I never do that. How do you get it off?
This kind of hides
Who
my.
can help me?
Okay. Thank you, Tess, for all those kind words. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take you on a journey back in time. 66 years ago, I was a young man living on a farm near Woodburn, Oregon. Woodburn is in the heart of the Willamette Valley, about halfway between Portland and Salem. At that time, I left the farm work to work in the Portland shipyards. Farm work paid 25 cents an hour. Shipyard work paid over 5 times that amount. There we constructed LST landing ships similar to the one that's in Evansville. Also aircraft carriers. The aircraft carriers were very impressive once their flight decks went on them. March the 30th, 1944, I was inducted into the Army at Fort Lewis, Washington. After 5 days there, I was sent to Camp Roberts, California for 4 months of basic training. The second day I was at Camp Roberts, the commanding officer introduced himself to all of these new inductees there and said, "I'm going to make killers out of every one of you." This was such a shock to me to think I was being trained to be a killer. I soon realized killing is what all war is all about. We had some interesting things happened in Camp Roberts. One was these were residents of Camp Roberts, and they gave us a little excitement. One was the rattlesnakes, the scorpions, and the tarantulas. We had quite a time with them, but we managed to get through. Some of the last training that I went through was the obstacle course, and we all lined up in front of these machine guns, and it looked like we were going to be executed. We had to crawl under the machine gun fire for over 100 feet, and these machine guns were going full blast over our heads. Every seventh shot round was a tracer, and as I was crawling on your stomach, they fire over your head about 36 to 40 inches, so you don't dare get above on your knees or anything. And every seventh round is a tracer, and between every round, every tracer is 6 shots being fired that you can't see. So those little tracers would zip over my head, and there'd be a little red flash, and they were kind of interesting, but I was glad to get through that course. Then we had what they call a forced field march. All it was just a big long walk at night. We had to walk 25 miles with a full field pack, rifle, and we started at 8 o'clock in the evening. It was a lot cooler at that time. California was extremely hot out there, hot and dry. So by about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, many of the men had a lot of blisters on their feet, and they had a difficult time making it, but that all came to pass. The last week I was in Camp Roberts, a recruiter from the Fort Benning paratroop school came to visit us and talked to us about volunteering for the paratroopers. While he was there, he told us all about the school, and he said, your bar for training and basic training is down about in here, but when you go to the paratroopers, you will be way up here. Don't look for anything else. He said it's extremely difficult, and about a third of the people who sign up and try out for the school never make it. So that sounded kind of interesting. So there were 7 of us, plus the fact that once you finish the training and become a paratrooper, your pay goes up from $40 a month to $90 a month. So that was a pretty good incentive. So 7 of us signed up from around 250, and off we went to Fort Benning. When we got down to Fort Benning, the second day there, we assembled on the parade ground, and in front of us was all of our instructors and our trainers. There was 7 instructors, and they looked pretty normal, and each one would step forward and introduce himself and say what type of training he would be giving. Then he would step back. Well, this went through the instructors. And when we got to the trainers, I knew they weren't anything like the others. They were professional athletes. 2 of them had played with the Cleveland Browns, and one with the Chicago Bears. And then the last one that got stepped forward, he said, I'm the world champion lightweight boxing champion of the world, and we're going to take it a little bit easy the first few days, and then we're going to see what you're made of. Well, yeah, they certainly did that. We had approximately 4 hours of physical activity every day for the first month, and the afternoons were usually filled up with training and learning how to survive behind enemy lines. When paratroopers are dropped behind enemy lines, they're usually on your own, and you try to work with your group, but in many cases, it's your own way. So that training went on for about a month, And then we started our jump training, first off of a 6-foot platform, which is what the force of the fall is when you come down in a parachute. Then we went into mock planes. Then we went into a 40-foot tower. That was like a bungee jump when you come off of that. You come down, and just before you hit the ground, your strap and your harness catches you on a roller and takes you on down to a sand pile. Then we went to the 250-foot towers. You put your harness on, your parachute is fastened to a huge ring, 28 foot in diameter, with little clips. The chute is 28 foot in diameter. They pull you up 250 feet in the air, and then they release that. Well, that was pretty easy. That was a lot of fun. So then came the main event. We went to the packing shed to pack our own chutes, and that really worried me. I was the last one out of that packing shed packing a chute. I couldn't understand why we would be packing and not a professional packer. So the next place was out to the airstrip to board the plane. And we boarded the C-47, that's all they had back in those days, and up we went. When we were in the plane, bench seats, no one was strapped in or anything. You didn't have safety straps in those days in those planes. And I looked across the aisle, and they were all stone-faced. They didn't say a word. They all looked like they were about to be executed. So we got close to the drop zone, and the jump, excuse me, the jump master came out and opened the back door, and boy, that was noisy. And so he said, stand up and hook up. Well, you stand up, there's a cable runs through the plane, and you hook your static line to that, and that's what opens your chute when you go out. So we watched the red lights and the green light. When the red light came on, he said, get ready to jump. When the green light came on, well, I tell you, my heart went up in my throat. And when we went out that door, I tell you, there was enough excitement to last me a lifetime. The first jump. But after the chute opened, it was a total calm came over me. I just felt like I was just as safe as if I was in grandmother's kitchen or something. So the second jump was a little bit better. We knew what to expect. Third jump was a little bit better. And each time we jumped, it was 200 feet lower. We started out at 1,500 feet. And the last jump, the fifth, was at 600 feet.